Alright, this is section 2.2.1, solving absolute value equations. We've talked pretty extensively about solving equations past couple weeks, so now we're going to take a little turn and talk about the absolute value. Before we get started into the solving and what that looks like, it's important to understand what does the absolute value mean. Okay, so absolute value, I'm sure you know what it looks like. You should have seen this previously. This is the distance away from zero. Okay, so a lot of times students want to say, oh, just change the sign or make it positive. Well, that's not exactly what's going on. So to understand what exactly is happening, suppose we had -4. We'll put a point there on the number line and put a point at 4. So if we're talking about the absolute value of -4, we're talking about how many units is it away from 0. So as you can see, we go 4 units. The absolute value of -4 is 4. We're doing +4. 1, 2, 3, 4. We go 4 units away from 0. So we're talking about the distance away from 0. We're not just making it positive. So just so you understand that, that'll help when we go into actually solving, okay? Now, before we actually do solving and look at some more difficult examples, let's first take a look at just some basic ones, okay? So we have the absolute value of x equals 4, x equals 7, and x equals -8, okay? So we can do this without even knowing how to solve. If we just think about this intuitively, the absolute value talks about the distance away from 0, okay? So if we're going to take a number and make it 4, that number has to have a distance of 4 away from 0. So, basically, what two numbers can we take the absolute value of to get 4? Well, we just saw it up here. We took the absolute value of -4, we took the absolute value of 4 to get 4. So, down here, we're going to say x equals -4 and x equals +4. Okay? So, we can do the same thing here. The absolute value of x equals 7. In order to get 7, we have to take either the absolute value of -7 and the absolute value of 7. Okay, so positive and -4, positive and -7. Let's take a look at this one. We have the absolute value of x equals -8. So we said before that the absolute value talks about the distance away from 0. Can you go a negative distance? Can you say that you drove -20 miles? That doesn't make any sense. When you do absolute value, you have to have a positive root. So that helps us lead into the actual solving process. All right, so the goal here is exactly like we did up here with these very basic ones. So these are the general procedures that you can follow. Okay, the number one thing, get the absolute value by itself. This is just like when you're solving a two-step equation. You want to get x by itself. The same thing happens here. We want to get the absolute value alone. Once we do that, then we can take the equation, we can split it up into two different parts. Okay, so to see what that looks like, we have absolute value of x plus 1 equals 4. Since we looked up here, we have to consider both what happens if this is negative, what happens if it's positive. So we have to do the same thing with things of this manner. So when we say split the equation, we're going to go x plus 1 equals -4, x plus 1 equals +4. So what happens is you actually get two very simple equations, which we can solve and go from there. And then that right there is your last step, solve for the given variable. We can all do that, okay? So the key here is get the absolute value by itself and then split it up into two different parts, okay? So let's go right ahead and jump into this. If at any point you feel like I'm going too fast, please pause the video and take a second to catch up and then just play it. Or if you have to play it back, do so as well. Alright, solving absolute value equations. We have absolute value of x plus 2 equals 5. Number one goal is to get the absolute value bars, if you will. by themselves. In this case, they are. Once we get that, then we can break it up into two different parts. Okay, so we're going to go x plus 5, or excuse me, x plus 2 equals 5, x plus 2 equals -5. Once we do the split, get rid of the absolute value bars, and then solve. We have x plus 2, just subtract, done. Subtract. There you go. So we get x equals 3 or x equals -7. So it's important to see that we want those two values. We just don't want to get one answer and then stop. You want to get both of those, okay? So let's take a look at another one. Let's keep going. We have the absolute value of 2x minus 2 equals 8. Same as before. You want to get this portion, you want the absolute value bars to be by themselves. So just as if we were solving a basic equation, this 2 needs to go by. Okay, so add it to the other side. Okay, once we do that, then we get what we're looking for. We want this absolute value to be by itself. Let's split it up. 2x equals positive 10. 2x equals negative 10. Once again, we have to consider what if this were positive, what if it were negative. Once we do that, divide. X equals 5. Divide. X equals -5, and we're done. So it's going to be x equals 5 or x equals -5. So it's important to realize that you're not always going to get positive or negative of the same number. So you're not always going to get positive or -5. If you see over here, we got 3 and -7. So don't just assume that you're going to get the same number and then guess. I mean, it's not too much for you to solve, okay? Alright, let's keep it moving. We have 2 times the absolute value of 3x. Same as before. You want this absolute value bars to be by themselves. Therefore, we need to divide by 2. We need to get everything that is attached to it off. So we end up with the absolute value of 3x equals 15. Absolute value by itself. Boom, split it up. 3x equals positive 15. 3x equals -15, and then divide. We get x equals 5 or x equals -5. Those are our two solutions, and we're finished. Okay. Once again, if you didn't catch that the first time, please rewind the video and go back. If you need to pause it as you're writing, please pause it. Otherwise, we're going to move forward. Okay. Sometimes we have more than one step or more than 2 steps to get to where we need to go. But regardless of what happens, we need to get this absolute value bars by itself. Okay, that's your number one goal. On D, let's get this 7 out of the way. Okay. Once we move that 7, absolute value of x minus 2 equals 3. Now we can go into the split. So we're going to take what is inside of the absolute value, set it equal to the same and its opposite. So 3 and the opposite would be -3. Once we do that, boom, we're ready to solve. Add the 2. 3 and 2 is 5. -3 and 2 is -1. There we go. Same as before. This one looks a little more difficult, but the same process holds. Get this by itself, so let's move this 4 first. This absolute value is going to stay. Okay. Once again, there's nothing attached, there's nothing added, subtracted, multiplied, divided to the absolute value. So once you do that, then you can split it. So we're going to go 2x minus 2 equals positive 2. Here, let me rewrite that. Let me rewrite that so it's a little better. There we go. 2x minus 2 equals 2. 2x minus 2 equals negative 2, and solve. This is a two-step equation, same as here. We're going to add the 2, divide. We've done two-step equations a million times. There we go. 2 over here. 2x equals 0, divide by 2, and we get 0. Alright, so at this point we've done a couple different examples. We're going to step it up with these last two. We're going to take it to probably the most difficult that we'll look at in this set. And this, we have something being subtracted from the absolute value as well as being multiplied. But that doesn't stop us from doing what we're doing. If we treat this just like an equation, we want to get that by itself. So let's get that 6 out of the way. Okay. Once we do that, we need to get this 8. This 8 is being multiplied, so we need to divide it. Okay, we don't want it there, so let's get rid of it. 32 divided by 8. Once we do that, good to go. Got our absolute value by itself, split it. Positive 4, negative 4, and we're ready to solve. Let's subtract. We get 0, negative 8, finished. Alright, last one. Same idea. We have this 3 being subtracted, we have this 3 being multiplied. Let's do this subtraction first. Just as we would if this were 3 minus 3x equals negative 3, we need to get this initial 3 out of the way to begin with. Alright, we get negative 3 times absolute value of negative 2x minus 4 equals negative 6. That's a mouthful. Alright, keep going. Divide. We get the absolute value of negative 2x minus 4 equals 2. Once again, absolute value bars are by themselves. Once we get that, we are good to go. That's what we're looking for. Once we do that, we split it. Positive 2, negative 2, and solve. This is a two-step equation. Let's add this 4 and divide. Add the 4 and divide. There we go. We get x equals negative 3 or x equals 1, and we are finished. If you did not get any of those, or if I went too little quick for you, please rewind the video, go back, make sure you're not missing anything. Otherwise, these 4 problems at the bottom here, I'd like for you to try on a separate sheet of paper and have ready for class when we meet next.